E aí, tudo bem? Feliz 2023! Eu ia voltar com vídeos novos semana que vem, mas apareceu essa oportunidade sensacional, esse presente aí de Natal, de Ano Novo, então eu tive que postar aqui. Eu bati um papo com a Ann Nocenti, a icônica argumentista de quadrinhos, daquela fase sensacional do Demolidor, criadora do Longshot, e que agora tem um trabalho sendo lançado no Brasil, Sementes. A gente vai falar desse novo projeto dela, da fase do Demolidor. Eu quero ver a reação dela ao ver uma revista Super Aventuras Marvel, ao saber como o Daredevil se chama aqui no Brasil. Tá imperdível. Mas antes da gente começar, curte o vídeo, se inscreve no canal, clica no sino, pede para receber todas as notificações e joga esse vídeo naquele grupo de WhatsApp dos amigos, manda para aquela galera que está colecionando a saga do Demolidor. Mas vamos lá, vamos dar as boas-vindas à nossa ilustre convidada. Miss Nocenti, it's a huge honor to talk to you. I'm a big fan, been a big fan for years. Welcome to HQ Você Precisa Saber.
Hi Brazil, hi Rafael, I'm so happy to be here. I'm very excited that the seeds are going to reach Brazil in Portuguese.
Great. Well, let's talk about Seeds then. It's being published now in Brazil by Editora Trem Fantasma. It's described as an eco-fiction tech thriller meets love story. That's beautiful. And this love story is between a human and an alien who comes to Earth to destroy it. Am I wrong?
Well, they're sort of like the aliens. You know how aliens are usually like evil and want to destroy the world, or they're, they're benevolent and want to heal the world, like E.T. These aliens are just like bungling. They're like, plumbers that came to fix your sink and they're not very good at it. And they make a mess and they spring more leaks. And so they're kind of they booked a gig there to go collect the seeds of dying planets. So, the big boss, whoever he is like, it looks like Earth is about to die. Go collect all their seeds, meaning like everything, and we're going to put it in the big celestial seed bank. And so they're just a mess. And as soon as they get to Earth, they sort of just split up. One decides he's going to go wreak havoc. Another one is like stalks Astra, the main character. Another one falls in love with a human. So each one in their own way wrecks the mission, even though they are sort of collecting seeds for this dying planet Earth. And then they go and they go store them in the celestial seed bank. So that's kind of the love story.
Yes, there's a love story between an alien and a human. How's that?
The alien is kind of both genders. Like, he's got some strange things that when he falls in love with the human Lola, that she discovers that this is a multi-gendered alien. So, and the main premise is that there's a journalist, Astra, and she is trying to get into the Luddite zone. So, do you know a lot of the word Luddite? I don't know how it translates into Portuguese, but there was a Luddite revolution in the States in like 100 years ago with the advent of a loom, and it was putting people out of work who were making cloth through looms. And so they thought they were going to all lose their jobs, and they smashed the looms. And so this is the idea that this is a neo-Luddite, and I love my phone and my computer, and I'm addicted to it, and I'm vaguely aware that I shouldn't use any of them because we're being surveilled and our data is being taken from us, but I use it anyway. And so I think it's just this very universal fear of unintended consequences, which could be anything from I never leave my house because I'm always streaming movies, to like now the new thing for artists is like this AI diffusion technology that is like just creating art. And so this comic, which David Aja and I came up with, in 2016, which was before the rise of Trump, before the rise of fake news. And we created this neo-Luddite zone where people that were just like, the only way, it's almost like going to an AA meeting because you can't quit drinking. Like, the only way I'm going to stop being addicted to my tech is if I just go over the wall where it's all illegal. And so all these people go over the wall because they're like, I got to get away from tech, surveillance and everything. And so that's kind of the premise. And when they get over there, they find these aliens that have come to collect the seeds of dying humanity. And so Astra's dying to get over the wall and in bed and do her journalism. And so that's kind of like the bounce off point for it.
Tell me more, how would it be, this neo-Luddite revolution?
It's like people who are very aware that technology always has blowback. So, you know, you create a factory with automation and people lose jobs. Like, the weird thing now is that we always thought that robots would take jobs, like factory jobs, and surprise, surprise, robots are taking jobs away from artists now. And this is something that hits the comic book industry in a big way, because if you can just sit at a computer and use GPT-3 chat to write a script, and then you take the script and you stick it into another program and it makes the illustrations and generates the comic, then artists and writers will be out of business. So it's, you know, it's getting smarter. It keeps getting smarter and smarter. Right now, the scripts and the art are kind of stupid, and they have no soul. They're just like empty and phony. But you can envision a day when that's gonna come next. So that's what a Luddite is, somebody who's just like, all tech has unintended repercussions and blowback. And you know, you can see it in social media. It started as like, Facebook, my friends and family, here's my pet, here's my cookies, you know, and then it became like, let's you know,
destroy it first.
Hate. Let's destroy the universe. Let's troll. Let's attack people. Let's you know, change an election. And then we're all like, wait a minute, what happened to like my cookies on Facebook? So you know, it's like, so. And that's one of the things that obsesses me is the lightning speed that GPT-3 chat and AI learning is. Like, these new programs are like rockets. They're zooming faster than us humans can comprehend them. And if we don't comprehend them, there's going to be things in our future that are going to blow back on us. And so that's kind of that. But also, David Aja, you know, David Aja is a genius, as you all know. And you know, I love looking at any page, like here's the binoculars, and then he blows up the scene here. There's like, the bird's tail is pointing to the center panel. The turtle is pointing to the center panel. This is nature saying, watch out, what are these aliens up to? What are humans are doing? He designs, and then the eye, everything he does is beautifully balanced to this. He's like in complete control of your eye. And so every page has this level of genius. And especially if you look at like the center panel, always look at the center panel and then see the girls with the iPhones right in front of their faces. And then you know, there's a rhythm that he builds into. So the joy of working with David is that you send the script and then he juggles everything and makes it like a piece of music. So the Seeds is the work that more than anything I've ever done would not exist without the artist. So we were like co-storytellers co-creators.
I would ask you to talk a little bit more about Seeds and why our viewers should read it, but I guess it's already answered.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very enthusiastic about this book because, I mean, I'm enthusiastic about a lot of stuff I've done, but I also feel like my career has there are a lot of flops and stinkers, you know, like, especially because when you're writing fast and you're on deadline, sometimes you're just like exhausted and you're like, this is as good as I can make it, and you turn it in because it's due. But with the Seeds, Karen Berger, who is a legend, she, you know, from Vertigo books, she launched like Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman and all the greats that came out of Vertigo. And I did Kid Eternity with her. She builds in time. She builds in enough time so that you really can craft a graphic novel without having to hit the deadline. And so the works are just become something that are reach what you wanted them to be. And the other book is Ruby Falls, which I did with Flavia Biondi, and that's another like Karen Berger graphic novel that didn't sell, and so it'll probably never make it to Portuguese. It's like a book that I love doing. Flavia Biondi, an Italian artist, but it did not sell at all, so it'll probably never get translated into any other language except for Italian.
I'll try to introduce you to some people here that would love to publish Ruby Falls here. We'll talk about it later.
You know, I love that book. It was like for women, about women. It was about a fallen woman in a very neo-noir way, like film noir. And who knows why some books sell and some don't, you know? But you hope that even if, you know, only a few people bought it, they liked it.
You mentioned Donald Trump, and you said in another life that Karen Berger thought Seeds became more relevant after he became president of the United States. Here in Brazil, we are divided politically. I believe it's the same in the US.
And it's like 50-50, you know, right, left. I mean, it's like silly. And my feeling on it, because I know you're having trouble in Brazil with your political system too, is that all of it is a distraction to keep us from realizing that like the 1% and the corporations and they're accumulating wealth and they want red to fight blue, they want left to fight right, they want us all fighting each other because it keeps we're blinkered, you know, like a horse with blinkers, because the real problem is class. So you have really poor people on both sides fighting each other rather than fighting the people that are taking, you know, that are hoarding the wealth. So I think that's like one of the big problems around the world is kind of fight that keeps us from saying, wait a minute, you know, follow the money.
Sure.
Yes, people have more interest in defending their politician of choice than being a critic of his work, doesn't matter the party he's in. Do you believe comics may be a way to unite people around a common goal? I think the world needs it. I would like to know what you think about it.
I think all the arts can do that, music, painting, you know, everything can do that. But it's what David and I tried to do in the Seeds was it opens with Astra, the journalist, saying, everybody says there are two sides to a story, to every story. And that was a reference to Republicans, Democrats in our country. And then, but there's actually 40 or 50 sides to each story. And then we proceed to fragment our stories so that we embrace like many points of view. And one of the most important points of view to us was animals and nature, because there's a lot of shots of just birds, turtles, you know, donkeys, whatever, looking at humans like, what are you doing? You're destroying the planet we live on, you know? So it's kind of like even though it's a story and there's the lines I'm saying are never in the story, it's in the design and in the pictures that's what we want you to feel and take away from reading the comic.
Pessoal, quem quiser comprar Sementes tem um link aqui na descrição. E se você se tornar assinante do Clube do Trem, ganha um baita desconto. Clica no link aqui na descrição para você entender melhor todos os detalhes. And besides a comic writer, you are a journalist and filmmaker also.
Wendy Johnson invited me on a falcon hunt in Baluchistan. She was my co-director, and we made this film in the desert with Baloch Arabs, Qatars from Qatar, Saudi Arabian. There's a deep love affair between these falcon hunters and their falcons, and then I also taught film in Haiti for a long time, and I wrote screenplays, and I had a filmmaking magazine. So
I know.
I've had that's my other career. Yeah. That was my first decade was Marvel Comics.
I know.
And then I had a decade of film and journalism. Then I came back to comics, and right now Marvel has this series called X-Men Legends, where they bring back us old timers to sing our greatest hits, So they brought me back to do X-Men Legends Longshot, and so I was able to do it's X-Men Legends 3 and 4, and it has Longshot, Spiral, Mojo, and...
Sure, it's a lot of fun seeing you coming back to those characters. Longshot is another character based in complex themes as existentialism and metaphysics. Very cool. And with Longshot comes Spiral and Mojo, one of the most creative X-Men villains, a dictator that rules his planet as a TV station. Genius stuff. But I want to talk also about this guy here, who's being republished now here in Brazil.
Oh, okay.
Your running Daredevil amazes me. I don't know if you know how he's called in Brazil. Demolidor.
Demolidor!
I think it's something like Demolisher.
Demolisher!
Very bad translation.
But okay.
No, I love it. I mean, he is not a demolisher. He's not a demolidor. He's a daredevil. But, what would be the Portuguese word for daredevil?
Well, there's not a word in Brazil that represents exactly what a daredevil means.
Well, what about diablo?
Well, it could be something like diabo, demônio, but still wouldn't represent what a daredevil is, a guy who risks his life and stuff.
That's funny.
When it was first published here, it was on this format. Look at the size of this.
Little.
And it was a mix. There's other stuff here, not just Daredevil. Here. This one was one of the best comics magazines at the time. The best material was here. It was called Super Aventuras Marvel, something like Marvel Super Adventures. It was late 80s, early 90s, years after it was published in the US. I was 14, 15 at the time. And even then I thought, as I think today, your work was much ahead of its time. It dealt with many adult subjects. It gets even a little surrealistic in that Mephisto arc. I read again now, all your run, and I reaffirmed how mature it is. You have such a unique style of writing and creating. My question is, how you feel about this work today? How it was perceived at the time by readers and your colleagues, other artists? Marvel let you do everything you wanted or said no to something?
My first work, Longshot, I didn't know what I was doing yet, and I was only 20. I just out of college, and Louise Simonson, Wheezy, it was the editor, and she really taught me a lot and helped shape me to put that work out. And so by the time I got to Daredevil, I was still maybe 25 years old or something, but they kind of once you figure out what you're doing, they kind of just give you free rein. So I had a lot less editorial whatever, but Ralph Macchio was he was a great editor, and he just kind of stepped in once in a while. He said, "You're going too far here," or he would say, bring it back in here. He was very much kept his distance, but he was like a little maestro, and I think that I haven't read that work since I wrote it.
Wow.
So when I do an interview about my old work, I usually tell people, here's a pro tip. When you're interviewing us old timers, never assume we even remember the work. So you have to say, could you read that issue, and we'll talk about that issue. And then I pick it up and I read it and I go, oh yeah, I remember where that's from, and oh yeah, I remember that. But you're talking stories I wrote over 30 years ago. So I don't know how they hold up. I hope they hold up, but I do remember that in the beginning, before I really understood who Daredevil was, I was more interested in the villains. I remember I came up with creepy villain after creepy villain after creepy villain, because I was like, what is this I didn't grow up reading superheroes, so I was like, what is this superhero thing? I don't even get it, So finally I started understanding who Daredevil was, and then I began shaping the narrative. How can I illuminate my hero? And Daredevil comes with these innate contradictions that make him an amazing story generator. He believes in the letter of the law. He is a symbol, but he's a lawyer, but he's also a symbol of blind justice, because he's blind and justice is blind. And when the law doesn't work for him, he goes out and he's a vigilante. He's Catholic. He wears a devil's suit. He's an endless story generator. And I think that's why, like the great, great, great characters in comics, the ones that are great have runs that are always great. Before me was Frank Miller. Before Frank Miller was Roger McKenzie. I don't know who's before that, but after me you had Bendis and Maliv, and then now Chip Zdarsky he's amazing. I love his run. There's something about Daredevil. Dan Chichester, I don't know that there's ever been a Daredevil team that Mark Waid. I mean, bang, 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 bang. He's always good. And I think it has a lot to do with the character himself. You look at him and you're like, oh boy, And so for me, Typhoid Mary was a way to have Matt fall in love with Innocent Mary and Daredevil fall in love with Typhoid, none of them knowing that Bloody Mary was lurking inside. And that comes right from, so when you get a book, you look at what went before and you try to leave something for the next team. So, Frank Miller established that Daredevil had a thing for bad girls, Elektra, and helpless girls. Like Karen Page was kind of portrayed back then, the junkie, maybe prostitute, and Daredevil, the two sides of Daredevil had a thing for two different kind of female stereotypes. Like they were still stereotypes. And when I took over the book, I still played with stereotypes in a weird way by having Typhoid Mary be all these different versions of women. And it's kind of like, then you hand this, whatever you built, you hand to the next writer. And I think that comics works the best when the next writer doesn't try and destroy everything, and they look at what was built and build on that and then head in their own direction. So I think that's, That's Daredevil, or Demolisher, or what's his name? Demolisher.
Talking about Typhoid Mary, the character was adapted in one of those Netflix series, but in my opinion, not as good as it could.
I actually loved it. I loved Alice Eve.
You love?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't. It's very difficult to not love when one of your characters comes alive, and I think that they had big plans for her. Like, she was gonna go into the other Netflix series, and they were only just beginning. So you only met Mary Walker, who's the one that like holds all the characters together, and a little bit of how she was fragmenting. But I think it was just the beginning of something that was going to be bigger. And I thought Alice Eve was great, you know? So honestly, I don't remember liking that, the overall series, but I was really excited for her to make it into Daredevil. So
I tried to imagine Typhoid Mary in the MCU, but I think she's so complex to that universe they're creating. Do you like this kind of movies? Would you like to see Mary in a Daredevil movie or series?
I thought the Daredevil series was great. I mean, especially Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin is magnificent. Like, he embodied and you know, I think the Karen Page character took her out of the helpless female junkie prostitute thing that she was and lifted her higher. I thought, you know, the what's his name, Charlie Cox, was a really intriguing, you know, I thought the Daredevil series was fabulous. Like, a lot of the Marvel series, I think they've been really good. Like the Luke Cage, that was Cotty Chubb was like the showrunner, and he was constantly trying to get like graffiti, and he used the Basquiat gold crown and the music. And I mean, I've enjoyed most of them. And then I think WandaVision kind of went to a next level because it was a critique on, it was like a Truman Show / you know, critique of 50s repression and Stepford wifeism or something. I mean, I think that one really started to hit on some bigger themes in a great way, that, you know, and it wasn't just contained in the superhero drama world, it was getting into larger society. So no, I mean, I'm a Marvel fan, so I like stuff they're doing. Other than, you know, as an independent filmmaker, we are all aware that Marvel is kind of like becoming the big Godzilla in the room, and, you know, everybody goes to Marvel movies, and indie films are, maybe I'm getting hurt by it, but it's a whole mess of things. You know, it's streaming, it's the pandemic, it's a lot of things that are hurting independent film. But you know, I started pre-internet, pre-movies in the 80s. We had no idea that there would ever be Marvel movies. The only one who always used to talk about movies was Stan Lee. He was like, I'm going to make movies. I'm going to go to California, Hollywood, and I'm going to make Marvel movies. And we were all like, yes, Stan, go ahead, Stan. You do that, Stan. You know?
I remember, I'm from that time too. That's why I'm not a hater of Marvel or superhero movies in general, because we wanted that a lot. Now that we have it, I try to appreciate the most. You were a woman writer at the 80s at Marvel. How was the bullpen? It was a friendly environment? Have you faced barriers for being a woman at the time? I know we have other great writers as Louise Simonson back then, but it was more a male business at that time than it is today.
It was a very male business. It was, you know, I would say 90% men. And when you'd go to cons, it would mostly be male readers. And if you saw a female at a Comic-Con, it usually turned out she was like the outlier that loved comics, or she was somebody's girlfriend or wife that was standing in line. But the bullpen was, you know, magical in the 80s, and I was mentored by Denny O'Neil especially, who really said, because Denny and I were sort of, we wanted to be journalists, you know? So he was like very, very, he pushed me to put journalistic documentarian ideas into Daredevil, especially. Archie Goodwin, Mark Grunwald was one of the early people that, so Wheezy and Karen Berger, Louise Simonson, Karen Berger and I have all sort of chatted about, like, was there sexism at the time? And none of us can really remember any sexism at the time. We felt very welcomed and very mentored, but sexism is tricky. Like, we don't really know what books we didn't get or opportunities we didn't get because we were shut out for being women, because that is the invisible side of sexism, is that you don't really know which doors never opened because you're a female. So I don't know, but I also feel like, and I feel this really strongly, is that my stories, I guess I wrote like I wrote Punisher and Wolverine and Daredevil, and I felt like it took the next generation of writers, the Kelly Sue DeConnitt's, the G. Willow Wilson, Kelly Thompson, it took the next generation of writers to really start writing stories that embraced women and brought more women into the field.
And there's so much more I wanted to ask, but you have to go now, unfortunately. It was an honor and a pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for your time and kindness.
So us comic book writers, we're nothing without our fans, and we really hope that the stories come alive in your brain. They don't exist until you read them, and they come alive in your brain. So David Aja and I are very excited that Brazilians will be reading the seeds in Portuguese, and I'm sure that I met the translator on a Zoom, and I think that he did a great job as far as I can tell, you know. He had some problems with all the B words. There's a lot of B words apparently that you couldn't match up to Portuguese, but I'm very excited to have Brazilians read the seeds in Portuguese, and they're sort of working on bringing me to Brazil for some Comic-Con, so hopefully I can meet you all.
Yes, Mário Barroso. He's a great translator. Great translator. Thanks again, Ann. É isso aí. Foi demais, né? E vem muito mais coisa legal aí em 2023. Não deixa de conferir a HQ da Ann Nocenti, Sementes também, ó. Tá aqui o link na descrição. Por hoje é só, pessoal. Nas próximas semanas... Semana que vem tem primeiras aparições Vingadores, as primeiras aparições dos principais personagens relacionados aos maiores heróis da Terra. Depois tem Assistindo HQ, X-Men e Novos Titãs Parte 2. Tudo que você precisa saber, Top 40 MCU. Acabou a fase 4, então vamos fazer um top com todas as produções, todas as produções do MCU até agora ranqueadas. E em breve... a HQ que eu lia e o filme que eu vi, Homem-Formiga e a Vespa, Quantum Mania. Até lá!